Welcome to the Choosing Happiness podcast with me, your host, Rüdrani Devi, the Happiness Lady. In these conversations, we will be discussing an uncommon way to find joy in your life with weekly special guests. Did you know you could choose your happy? Won't you come and play and discover how these magical tools could work for you? Let's do this! Well, howdy, y'all, from Nashville, Rüdrani Devi, the Happiness Lady. That's right, me again. Wrote a book about it, Choosing Happiness. And I am thrilled and honored to have my next guest, Julie Rieger. Hello, Julie.
Hi.
Thank you so much for joining us.
Well, hello, everybody. Do I need to turn on my Southern accent too? Because I can.
It's all right. It's up to you.
It's very natural. I can, y'all.
Well, I was born in the South, but I was born from two Italian parents and grandparents that were visiting. So this is the reason why, and I was a broadcasting major. So I don't really have a lot of accent, but I likes it. I think it's pretty. Don't you?
I do. I have to be honest with you though. I had to work to kind of tamp it down a little bit when I moved out to California. Because I kept just enough to be charming, but not enough to sound like a hillbilly. Well, I think a lot of it's gone. I do say y'all a lot, but my family is not like, we were not Southerners. We ended up there because of the Depression.
Oh.
Yeah, my family's from the East. Do what?
So that's a whole nother podcast.
Oh, seriously. But that was all, yeah, my family's been here for a long time. But it was the Depression. My grandfather was a glass blower.
Oh.
And he lost his job in Pennsylvania, found one in Oklahoma, Okmulgee, Oklahoma, and that's how we ended up there. My mother was not a Southern woman. She was a terrible Southern woman, actually.
That is a very interesting Southern place. I dated a guy. So crazy. I'm going to drop a name. I dated Garth Brooks' brother off and on for 7 years. And so I was in Oklahoma a lot, very flat, lots of cows. And I was like, geez, Louise, their accent, it's different. It's not a Tennessee Southern accent.
No, it is different.
Very different. And they're a little snobby about it, man. I'm going to be honest. They're a little partial to their accent, you know?
Yeah.
His mother used to ride me. She'd be like, girl, that is not how we say that in these parts.
Oh,
and I'd be like,
funny.
Well, alrighty then.
So my favorite thing, I know this isn't what we're talking about, but my favorite thing though, and my favorite sayings that I picked up in Oklahoma, and I still say today because I can't help it, is I'm a very good driver. Like I'm a really good driver. I'm like, as part of my ADD, it's like when I focus, I am on the road. I'm a good driver. So if I'm a passenger and somebody's like looking around doing whatever, and like they might just kind of turn a little bit off the road, I'm like, well, you're going plumb off the road. And they're like, well, how far is plumb? I'm like, it's off. That's all that matters. Get back on.
That's right. No, I am so righteous about my driving. That's so weird.
Me too.
When I'm in the car, I am so uber focused. I know what the person next to me is thinking. I know if somebody's going to slam on their brakes. I know if I need to go left or right. It's like, okay, there's several ways I could get to this place. And the car, it's like we're one.
I have a story about that whenever you're ready. We don't have to do it yet, but we're gonna work our way up to that story. But I don't want to forget, I have a car story where my life was saved.
Okay, so station identification break, y'all. We're gonna come back to that story. Morning glory. But what I'd like to do first, Julie, please tell the listeners and those watching on the YouTubes now or in the future a little bit about you. I'm going to tell them a little bit about how we met, but I would like because you're like me, we're a jack of several trades, or you're Julie of several trades. Would you mind sharing all the things?
No, I don't mind at all. And I'll do the earlier stuff really fast because it's the stuff later that became really interesting. But I grew up in Oklahoma, and I had a golf scholarship in college. So I was like of the sporty variety. It was kind of my path. Yeah, it was kind of my path of my lesbianhood. So it only makes sense that I was a golfer.
Sure.
Yeah, it's actually kind of true. A lot of the women golfers, not all, but yeah, we got our fair share. Oh yeah, it's a thing. I don't know what it is. But I played all sorts of sports. Like I grew up in the age of just past Title IX, where girls were allowed to play sports. And my mother, who we're going to talk about, she dragged me around to every tryout for every sport in our little town of Miami, Oklahoma.
Wow.
And I became the pitcher in the Little League. I was a starter for the boys basketball league for basketball. Oh, I said basketball, soccer, all those kinds of things. But my mom was so ahead of her time. She's like, she told me when I was a kid, I was like 15. And she was teaching me how to drive, and she goes, "Baby," that was she's calling baby. I was also technically her baby.
Right.
She goes, "You can be whatever you want to be." She goes, "And you can do whatever you want to do. In fact, you could probably do it better than a man. Don't let anybody hold you back." And she goes, "In fact, you don't have to get married if you don't want to. You can shack up. And if you don't want to have kids, you can adopt." That is my mother, who was born in
Wow.
1934, was her
My mother's
advice to her daughter.
33. They were almost twins.
Yeah, she was 34. So that's kind of where I come from. I spent a bit, I moved to Dallas, finished up school at SMU, and
Another
uh,
southern state,
another, so yeah, right. It was great education, though, I
Texas.
have to say.
Mhm.
And then I got into advertising. And once I moved from advertising, the best job that I've had in my life was I was a president at Fox Film. And I didn't join there until I was in my late 30s. So I had grown
Wow.
up in another industry, so I didn't kind of have the same
Still, wait,
DNA.
still a trailblazer. Don't just pass over that. That was a that's you, girl.
Oh,
You're
listen,
before.
there is no doubt, and thank you for saying that. It's I growing up in Oklahoma, I thought that my scenario was going to be I was going to marry my high school boyfriend, who P.S. he's also gay, and live in Tulsa and manage a J.C. Penney department or something, which would have been a fine life. There's nothing wrong with any
Mm,
of that. It's like I feel like my life has been a bonus round. Like every time I turn around, there's something that surprises me about it. And so certainly, I could have only dreamed about something Hollywood when I was a kid in a
right.
small town in Oklahoma, right? So it was exciting, and it was an amazing time in my life. I learned so much. I mean, I got to work with some of the greatest storytellers ever known, Jim Cameron,
Mm,
and work with some of the greatest
wow.
actors and actresses ever known. One of my favorite was my encounter. We did the movie The Heat with Sandy Bullock and Melissa
Yes.
McCarthy, and I love Sandy, and we were in lots of meetings with her because she was a producer on the film, as an exec producer. But it was
She's
the
brilliant.
day, she's, oh,
I
I
mean, if
mean,
I was in it for women, she's totally my type.
uh,
Okay.
uh, I could find
She's
her
brilliant,
maybe and hook you
gorgeous.
up. Oh, she
Right.
is stunning. But I will tell you, in a one-on-one
Mm,
situation or in a small
mhm,
group situation, she is absolutely positively brilliant. She's a brilliant
mm.
businesswoman. She
I believe it.
understands what she's doing. No, she was really impressive. But my fun interaction with somebody that I met was one morning I got to the office really early, it was about 8 a.m. And I had to go up this little set of stairs from the parking lot, and that little set of stairs took you to the main level. And as I'm walking up, I'm a couple stairs up, and I look up and I see Melissa, and she's walking by. She clearly was there early for a meeting. And I looked at her and I mouthed, "I love you." And she looked at me and she goes, "I love you too." And we just went on our merry ways. And that was my interaction with Melissa. And it was one of my favorite things that I experienced.
Oh my God.
It was really fun. So, I feel like I'm doing a lot of name dropping, but it was my job and it was exciting, but it was, Mark Wahlberg, I tell you, one of my
Oh my God, I
favorites.
love that guy because I've
Oh,
seen him in so many interviews as well. He's like he's for the reals,
he's
you
incredible. One
know?
of my all-time favorites.
Oh.
Another favorite was Dwayne Johnson, so also known as The Rock.
Yes.
We did the movie The Tooth Fairy, like back in the 2000 aughts somewhere,
I'm gonna
some
have to look that one up.
2007, 8, whatever it was.
Mm.
And he was in it with Julie Andrews. And so we have this big marketing meeting, right, with
Julie
Dwayne.
Andrews, one of my favorites. We have the same birthday. Anyway, go on.
Oh, no, I love him. And so I think I'm trying to think of the time. I'm 53 right now, and I must have been around 40 because 40, and I know that it was like the greatest health I've ever been in. Like I was strong. I had just paddleboard across Lake Tahoe. Like, I mean, I was in great shape. And then, by the way, menopause hit, but that's another podcast. So, so I'm in really great shape.
I
And
can get me
after
on
the
that
meeting,
podcast if you'd like.
It's fucking terrible. Oh, can we cuss? I just
Yeah.
did. Okay.
Okay.
So sorry everybody if that offends you.
You don't know much about me or my podcast.
Well, I just don't know I don't know your audience. I just want to
Yeah,
apologize
yeah,
to them
it's
if
true.
I offended anybody. But so this is post the meeting with Dwayne, and I go up to him afterwards and I put my hand on him like, Dwayne, thank you so much. It was so great to have you, and that I'm excited about the movie releasing. He's like, Julie, what a great meeting, and da da da. I can't wait to see you again. And I said, well, next time we meet, I go, I am going to challenge you to an arm wrestling match. And just for the record, I had already beaten some of the guys in the office, and I'm like 10 years older than them. I beat them with my left arm, like that. So I'm pretty
That was
confident.
that when I was a bodybuilder. I did the
There
same
you
thing.
go. See, So, so I say to him, that, oh my God, this is amazing.
Oh,
What is that?
proof. That's me in Newsweek magazine with the big hair, y'all.
Oh,
Is
oh
that
my
crazy?
goodness,
Trying to be.
girl.
I know. Anyway, that's a long time
Okay,
ago.
so I was never
Well,
that. I was just strong as an ox. So I said to him, I'm going to challenge you to an arm wrestling match. And he looked at me, he goes, and he looks down because he's giant. He goes, Julie, he goes, I just need to let you know something. I go, what's that? He goes, I will not let you win. I said, well, that's fair because I need to let you know something. He goes, what's that? And I said, I'm not going to let you win either. And he squealed like a schoolgirl. He was laughing so hard.
oh my gosh.
But just a really great guy. So anyway, so I did have this really amazing job at Fox Film. And during that time, which is I think why we're here, is something extraordinary happened. Something devastating and extraordinary at the same time. I say happened.
Yeah.
I experienced.
It's funny. Yeah, it happened.
Well,
At
but
the same
well,
point
the
of view.
happen part is my mom had Alzheimer's, and so the entire
Oh,
time that
man.
I was there, I was managing through that, and it was incredibly devastating. Again, that's a different show. Um, and the
You
incredible
talked
thing
about it in your book.
I talked about a lot about the Alzheimer's in my
Hmm.
book. And um, once she passed, I was so desperately grieving because my mother was like, and still
Yeah, yeah.
is,
I get it.
extraordinary. Like I would have
I have
never,
one of those.
yeah, I could have never, if somebody said you can make the perfect mom for yourself, I would make her no different than who she was. Like that's how extraordinary my mom was. And that's where I
Wow.
learned my cussing from, by the way. Like she had a mouth like a sailor. I super come by it very honestly. So what happened during that we're going to call it a spiritual awakening is I started seeing ghosts and photographs, and that was
Mhm.
how it all started. Then I started hearing them and feeling them and smelling them.
Yeah.
All of it. I had a
Smoke. Oh,
ghost
we're
jump
here
on my
again.
back, all these things that happen. And so I wrote a book called The Ghost Photographer, which is really my journey through grief and the extraordinary things that happened. And I think that's why we're here. And that's going to be the story I'm going to tell you about whenever you're ready to come back.
Ah,
There's
we're
your
back.
cue. Okay,
No sponsors yet, Julie, but
we're
we're working
back.
on
Look,
it.
2-0.
It's a great place to cut if you need to, Vinny, and don't take any of that out because that's we're into the real time kind of things. You're super.
Okay, here we go then.
You guys don't know this, but Julie also has a podcast, so she's a pro at this kind of stuff. So
I love talking, so
yeah,
I could do it all day. Um, I don't remember everything that comes out of my mouth, but I sure do love to talk. Uh,
for those
uh,
of you who are not on YouTube, I just did a happy dance.
that was a really
Oh,
good happy dance.
thank you.
So what it was a really fascinating experience, and I have to tell you, I've reread my book, and if I didn't experience, I don't know if I'd believe about half of it.
I know, right? That's how I
You
was when
know,
I did the second edition of my first book. It was the same thing. I thought, who wrote this? This is not possible.
it's
You
not possible.
can't explain it. Yeah.
Yeah, I thought the same thing when I read and became friends with Anita Morjani,
Mm.
who wrote "Dying to Be Me." I thought the same thing when I
I'm listening
met,
to a book right now.
and oh, she's fantastic.
Yes.
Danny Brinkley, and I was very fortunate. They all wrote little blurbs for my books. It was nice. I read it in
Oh,
advance. Yeah, I
nice.
was very honored. Um, but I went back and I'm like, because time is really good. It just puts things in perspective. And it's like, I'm not sure I'd believe it all if I didn't experience, but I did. So I do believe it all. And, when you talk about happiness, when you talk about how you can find it and hold on to it. I look at my life, and I'll tell you why in just a second. I'm going to give you the outcome first. Is that I look at my life is this whole idea of a bonus round, and
Mhm.
I especially understood what that meant after this experience I had on the 405 in Los Angeles.
Here's the
And
car story, y'all.
here's the car story, y'all.
Here we go.
So, my wife Suzanne and I, who just celebrated 30 years together a few days ago, um, we lived in Sherman Oaks. So Sherman Oaks is part of LA. It's just a, it's the birthplace of porn. That's all I can tell you. It is. It's the birthplace of porn.
Sherman Oaks. I did not know that though. That's so funny.
Sherman
When I
Oaks is the
was
birthplace of porn.
there, I was there quite a bit. We did telecine at some. I don't know. Maybe that's where all the porn was getting done, or when they were piecing the film together. I don't
Oh,
know.
the porn was actually at people's homes, and they had to
Nice.
put signs up and give people mailers that this is what was happening in the neighborhood. Oh, I had a friend that actually made quite a bit of money renting her place out for porn. Whole
Wow.
other thing.
Okay.
But you got to hang your hat on something. So Sherman Oaks, I guess, porn. So we lived in Sherman Oaks, and I would commute to Century City every day because that's the Fox lot.
Hmm.
And my routine was I would get in my car and I would start calling people. I say I do it like this, but that's not what I did. I had a speaker
Yeah.
in my car, obviously, like everybody else does. And I would catch up with friends. I would talk to East Coast folks for business things. My ad agency was based in New York, so like I like got stuff done, stayed in touch,
Sure.
all those things. So this one particular morning, I get in my car and I'm headed out to work, and I called 5 different people. Not a single one of them picked up the phone,
Hmm.
which was odd,
Unusual.
incredibly odd. Um, so I called all these folks, and then I had in another weird thing about that day is that my radio was off because even if I wasn't talking, I had something playing, right? Like all the distractions. So my radio was off. Nobody was picking up the phone. So I enter the 405 off of Sepulveda Boulevard for those familiar with LA,
Mhm.
and I start heading toward Pico Boulevard for those that know again the
Mhm.
layout. So I'm on the 405 for about 5 or 6 miles,
I'm there with you.
right?
Mhm.
So when I get on, one of the first exits I pass is Sunset. Everybody knows Sunset Boulevard.
Yes.
So now
Marlboro
remember,
Man. That's
there you
what I was.
go. That's right. So note at this point in time, no one's picked up the phone, no radio, and I'm here at Sunset Boulevard. So I'm just driving along, 10 and 2, like a good driver, and I hear as clearly as you hear my voice, don't turn on the radio. If your phone rings, don't pick it up.
Wow.
And it's a man's voice, by the way.
And
And
you're
then the
going.
next thing, and I'm like, and I'm sitting here going, and here's what's funny. I have the tendency to listen to disembodied voices more than I do humans.
Yeah.
So I'm doing what he's telling me to do. It's like, nope, no phone. We're not going to turn on the radio. Then he says there's going to be an accident. And then I'm alert. I'm ready,
Huh.
right? I am sitting up and I am definitely 10 at 2 and I am like scanning, seeing
White
everything.
knuckles.
Oh, totally. So within 60 seconds, I know how the time was because I went from
Felt like an
Sunset
hour.
Boulevard. It did. You're right, actually, it did.
Sure. Been there.
Um, I'm at the next exit, which is Wilshire,
Yeah.
and the 2 cars in front of me collide. Now, this is rush hour traffic, right?
Yeah.
So,
Worst.
right. So, 2 cars in front of me collide. And because I was ready, I pumped my brakes to let the ones behind me know that something was happening because that's also I don't want to get hit, right,
Yeah.
rear-ended, because then you get a part of a whole pileup.
Sure.
And I slammed my brakes on really hard, and I just missed the car in front of me by like a hair, right? So no collisions that happened. So I'm kind of like, and I check to see everybody was okay, right? Because that's what you do. I get back in the car and I'm like, this is really weird. What just happened to me, right? Like I've heard stories of this shit, but this is insane. So I called Suzanne, my wife, and I tell her what happened. And she said to me, well, who do you think it was that was telling you this? I'm like,
Right.
I don't know.
That
She
would have been
goes,
my question.
right, who was it?
Mhm.
And she goes, do you think it was Mona? And Mona was this friend of ours that was one of our best friends, lived 12 houses up from us in Sherman Oaks. And she had passed about 6 months prior in a car accident. So that's
Oh,
why Suzanne was kind of putting together, was that Mona
yes.
coming in? And I'm like, no. I said, honey,
Man.
it was a man's voice. She goes, you think it was your dad? I'm like, I think I would have recognized it.
Ugh.
So we go through this whole back and forth, and then she goes, wait a second. She goes, why are you so calm? And I said, because I was like aware, I was ready. Like I
Mhm.
got a tip, right? Something's going to happen. I knew something was going to happen, so I was prepared for it. She goes, it's
Futurist.
just right. She goes, it's so
Mhm.
weird. She goes, why don't you call Patricia? And Patricia's a friend of ours who owns the Crystal Matrix in Atwater Village in LA. And she's also one of my teachers. So she ended up, she taught me transcrystal therapy. She was a magnificent human being, still is. I mean, I love this woman dearly and will be indebted to her through space and time.
Huh.
So I call Patricia and I tell Patricia what you all know. And she goes, well, Julie, she goes, do you know about our spirit guides? She goes, do you know much about them? I'm like, eh. I mean, that was my response was, eh. And she's like, well, spirit guides, their job is they sign up before we go into our bodies, and their job is to help nudge us, through life. Like that's their job. We are their jobs. And we can have one we have a relationship with. Everybody has multiple ones. They have different things they do. There's like a joy guide, and she's just going down, kind of telling me the hierarchy of them.
Mhm. I even
And
have an animal guide. It's fantastic.
yeah, the guides are fantastic. Yes, I have
Mhm.
two wolves. Um,
Tiger.
and Oh, there, of course you are. Of course, your new name is Tiger. Okay, so
That's
Tiger, um, everybody call her Tiger from now on. So, so
Tiger
she,
unicorn. Yeah.
so Tiger, that's perfect. That's right. So she said to me, she goes, well, this was, likely, your spirit guide stepping in to protect you from what was coming. And I
Mm.
said, and of course, being a dipshit, I said, well, that's a really good thing because I could have really hurt that woman in the car ahead of me. And she goes,
Huh.
oh, no, no, no. By the way, P.S. She called me baby too. Oh,
Yeah.
no, 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 baby. It wasn't that woman's life your guide was saving. It was yours
Yours.
because she saw it. I mean, she saw it all. She saw all the alternatives of things that were happening. And she
Mhm.
says, oh, no, baby, it was your life. And then at that moment, it was the most humble I have ever been in my entire life.
Right.
In that
Gosh.
moment, I was like, oh, 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 okay,
Mhm.
my life, my little life.
What
Oh,
am I going to do from this point forward now that I have this information?
well, right. Well, and I'll tell you so then in my head, with my hair sticking up right now, in my head, I am I'm thinking about like, wow, what the hell was going on behind the scenes for all these spirits and guides and everybody to do what they're doing. So I go to work, I step in the office, and I'm shook. Like
Sure.
I am shook. And I literally know what shook is. I lived in LA and went through multiple earthquakes. So I know what shook is. I was shook.
Mm.
And of course, I'm telling people, some of my friends at work, and they're going, all right, crazy. And I'm like, no, really, it happened. So fast
And they know
forward,
you. They already know you, sound, mind, and body and all of that.
they
And you're
do.
telling this thing that's like in another, if they had just met you, they'd be like, okay, she's cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs now.
That's exactly what they would think. But you're right. And so
Mhm.
the good news about that is that I was very much known for being an earnest, straightforward person. I
Mhm.
was the worst political employee ever. Like I didn't play the games. I was told multiple times that you're the worst, like, kind of politics person in business. And I'm like, and because I actually, a guy said that to me one day, because I don't want to insult you. And he tells me this, I go, oh no, honey, that's a compliment. I don't want to be like you guys. I'm me. And
Yeah.
I wake up every day wanting to do the right thing. So
Mhm.
go back to work that day. So I leave whatever time I leave, and I get on the phone and I call a woman named Pam, who is Mona's sister. So going
Okay.
back to Mona,
Right.
because Mona, or actually Pam, she was in the car
Oh, wow.
When Mona had the accident, when Mona died, it was her best friend. Also, Pam's husband was in the car and he was thrown out and still to this day suffers from a traumatic brain injury.
Oh my God.
So I used to call her every day to check on her, all
Mhm.
those things. And so Pam picks up so I called her on my way home. She picks up the phone and I'm like, girl, you are not going to believe what happened to me today. I'm
Right.
like, buckle up, buttercup. Are you ready? And so I tell her the story. And then she says to me, she goes, do you want to hear this second half of your story? I
Oh
go,
no.
what?
Shut the
I
front door.
go, exactly, shut the front door. I'm like, yeah, bring it on. What do you got? She goes, well, this morning when you called. And I go, uh-huh. And she's in East Coast time, by the way, so it's 3 hours
Oh,
later.
yes.
And she's like, I was still in bed. She goes, I can get depressed and I don't like to get out of bed. I'm like, oh, girl, I know better than anybody does how you are right now. And she goes, but I had the phone and I saw you calling and I went to go reach for the phone, but my body wouldn't move.
Mm,
She
mhm.
said, it is the first time in I think she was 50 at the time. She was the first time in my 50 years on this planet that my body did not do what I asked it to.
Huh. Bodies
And
are smart, y'all.
right. And
Smarter than
so
you, by the way. All you stupid people, your bodies, listen to your bodies, by the way. Okay.
listen to,
Plug for the bodies. Plug
always
for
listen
the bodies.
to them.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So she said to me, she goes, she's, well, what would have happened if I would have picked up the phone this
You'd
morning?
be dead, girl.
That's what she said, and what
Mm.
I said. I'd be dead today. And so then we talked about, she goes, what do you think that was? And I said, is it possible that it could have been Mona holding you back, holding you
Oh my
down
goodness.
to make sure that I was taken care of? Because she knew the behind the scenes. Like, this is the part that I love so much about the other side is
Mm.
the collaboration, the coordination, just in the off chance
Right.
that we spirits having a human experience will pay attention to them. Imagine all the ones that don't pay attention, right?
You know, right?
The work that they had to do to hold Pam down, for me to to actually hold the other four callers, because I did actually call everybody. I'm like, what the hell didn't you pick up the phone? And there
Uh,
was in every case
everybody
there
had
was
a reason.
something weird. It was weird too. Everything
Oh,
was like, it was strange. Like most of them actually saw me calling, but they were distracted by something else.
huh.
All of these things. So I
Yeah,
could be here today talking to you,
that's amazing.
Tiger. So that's Tiger Unicorn, sorry. So that is my happiness. That is my bonus round. That is I got another shot at it. That is also was my call to be of assistance to anybody who needed me.
Mm,
That was my call to be truthful with myself about everything. That was my call to further studies, because I then spent 2 years in mediumship school, one on
wow.
one, actually. Um, that was my call to write a book. That was my call to start a it was everything. And I've had people, and I'm sure you have too, that have reached out over the years, that have like, you changed my life.
Yeah, it's weird because
And
it's a throwaway line, and then come back and said, "I changed the whole course of my life because of this one thing you said to me."
right,
You don't hear
right,
about it until like 10 years down the road. It's like,
you don't.
"Oh, really?
You don't,
Wow."
but I tell you what I heard immediately that was pretty incredible
Mm.
was this man down, he lived north of San Diego, and he got a hold of me. He heard me because I was on, oh my God, I can't believe this. I just forgot the guy who does the midnight on iHeart. He does all your listeners are like, Julie is bleh. They're all screaming at either the screen or their
Dude.
earpods or something. Anyway, I was on this show, a radio show. He heard me. So he found me and he goes, I
It's not
feel like,
Ryan Seacrest, is it?
no, but I was on Ryan later.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. Um, uh, but he said, my daughter, he goes, I'm afraid she's being attacked by something at night. She has scratches on her, that all these kinds of things. So I went to his house.
Hmm.
I'm like, I'm happy to come by. Um, and and he's like, let me check with my wife, because I mean it's kind of weird to have some stranger just come by your house
Well,
and
been there
you're
too.
right, of course, right.
feel like you're
And
talking about my life. It's
yeah,
so
right. That's one of the things. Like we have this parallel thing going on. It's kind of
Mhm.
awesome, actually. And so so I actually meditated before I went in, and it was incredible. I saw markings on her, like there's a marking there, and I didn't meet her yet. I went into the house, talked to him and his wife, and I said, "Does she have like a birthmark, like right here, but kind of like in her third eye?" And they're like,
Mm.
"Yes." I'm like, "Okay." I said, I go,
Oh,
"I'm asking you not to be creepy. I'm
portal?
asking you for confirmation."
Portal?
Um, she's gifted, is what
Yeah.
comes out, is that she is a psychically gifted child, and that's what we worked on and had discussions about. And I even talked to her, and I talked about her protect. And I said, listen, she's a lighthouse. Just think about it this way. So if you're in a boat, a ship, and you're passing by and you see the lighthouse, that's your daughter. It's like she is a
Right.
beacon in the darkness. And that's the thing about very gifted people, is they could be these beacons and they attract everything. And
Yeah.
especially the dark side that wants to kind of crush them. Because I saw all of this in my meditation before I met her. And so I worked with their daughter, because it's her. I mean, I know she's 3, but it's her life, it's her spirit that she has to
Mhm.
protect. So I brought black tourmaline with me, and I'm like, well, tell me where you feel them. And I had her place the black tourmaline in her closet, under her bed, all these things. And so I still get reports to this day. And my book came out in 2018. It never happened again, because she knew who she was, and she knew what she had to do.
Oh, and
Right.
she actually acknowledged it.
And yeah,
How
yeah.
old was she? Is she?
Well, she's probably 8, 9 now, somewhere around there.
Wow.
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
incredible.
yeah, yeah.
That's
Listen to your
incredible.
kids. I mean, that's all I'm going to tell y'all. Whoever, like, listen to your kids.
Yeah, they'll teach
Um,
you
well, they'll teach us, and they'll also tell us,
that. Mhm.
right, like what they're experiencing. And especially if there are people, I'm sure everybody who listens or watches your show are more spiritually inclined to believe in a lot of this, so they probably don't struggle with what a lot of other parents do, which
Mhm.
is just deny, deny, block, block, block.
Right. Well, her mother was a medium and used to channel for the Pope. She did automatic writing for the Pope at the time. They're all from Italy. And she said she came into the room one time and she heard me talking, but I couldn't really. I mean, I had a few words, but I'm a toddler. And I'm standing up in the crib and I'm like, and I'm pointing at the glow people. I was like, glow people. Oh, I'm so sorry, little unicorn guy. Glow people, glow people. And, I was thinking of like Romper Room or whatever had that glow worm or inchworm that glowed or something like
Yep.
that. Had one of them. And the bouncy ball thing, which they're now outlawed because they're very dangerous. Anyway, I digress. She said that I was like pointing and for me, and my eyes were like practically shut because for me, the room was completely bright. And what was standing before me were these 4 really tall beings that almost looked
Mm.
too big for the room. And they were all,
Were they
watching.
the north, south, east, west giant guys? Is that who they were? Do you know who they were?
Yes, that's weird. I mean, I'm getting
Yeah.
into this. I didn't know that at the time.
Yeah, 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 yeah. Okay.
Pretty wild. And what I knew about them is that they were going to protect me, that there was something on. And my mother told me later, because my dad tried to squash it all out of me. And my mom told me later, she goes, I knew you were gifted. My mother told me I was going to have a gifted child. And I kept for waiting for you and waiting for you. She says 4 kids. And she said, I don't want to have any more kids. And then I come along, number 5, and then my younger sister, and I'm the one. And they actually all know how weird I am. That's okay. Unlike you, I didn't have to come. I just sort of was
Weird
there
is fun, though. I mean,
talking about all this stuff, talking to trees. I talk to animals. They talk back, all this
okay,
stuff.
trees. Okay, I have to tell you, we had this tree at our house in LA, and it was an olive tree, and of
It's so
course
sad you left.
I named him Oliver. But here's what I did with Oliver. We went through 2 major droughts when we lived there, and so Suzanne and I became really amazing water conservationists. So I
Mm,
would go collect our gray water when I would heat up the shower, because that's just what you're throwing water away. And I'd collect it in
well,
one of those big, like Home Depot buckets, Homer
yeah,
buckets. And then when it was full, I would go out and I would water Oliver. So
Oliver.
Oliver was kept alive for years through gray water. And Oliver, I would sit at the base of him and he would talk to me. And
Yeah.
he actually gave me things to do for water conservation. I'm a big water
Wow.
conservationist because that's our biggest
Hey,
threat right now.
I am this Earth's bitch, y'all. I care a lot more about this planet, even though it doesn't have a point of view about it, than I do about the people. Because I'll tell you something, if we don't have this planet, if we don't take care of her,
Yeah.
we ain't here no more. Just
Right.
saying.
Right.
That's just my point of view.
Right. Right.
So,
Well, I have, of course, friends who have looked at things,
hmm,
the future, have the
sure.
ability. I've also, my friend Patricia actually taught me how to channel. So I also have learned how to channel. So I have, for those that don't know what it is, it's where you really surrender your body to a master to come in
Mhm.
and communicate. And so
Pretty
I've
amazing.
experienced that as well. And I have people who do that. And we will be extinct, right? It's just, we will be extinct.
Mm.
Not saying we won't ever be back again, but there will be a time, a point of extinction. We're not near it in this lifetime, folks. So don't anybody freak out and, go buy
Oh
out all
my God. Yeah.
the Irish butter at the grocery store, which is what I would probably be buy out, which I probably why I said that. So
It is the best.
it is. And I will
Salted
tell
and
you,
salted, it doesn't matter. It's so creamy and delicious. Sugar
yeah,
pretzel.
the
No doubt.
Kerrygold, ugh,
Yeah,
nothing
that's
better.
the one.
So I actually, if you don't mind, I'm gonna. So this whole idea of extinction and the planet and stuff, I didn't know we are gonna head in this, but I want to
No,
just say
please.
something to your a very quick story for your audience that I learned from my co-host and my dear friend Brenda. And Brenda's a gifted psychic. She literally born. Time out of the womb, she started seeing fairies and ghosts and shit.
Mm,
And
my people.
yeah, and truly w- one of the most kind, loving human beings into strangers that you'll
Mm,
ever meet in your life. Like she really is, she's here to serve mankind. I mean, she's that extraordinary. Like
it
wasn't it?
embodies the generosity of spirit, I
Oh,
would say.
she's amazing when and she does stuff that nobody knows about. Like when there was a tsunami that hit Phuket, Thailand. Do you remember when
Hmm.
that
Yes,
hit
I
Phuket?
do.
Um, when there are mass deaths, a lot of the spirits go to Brenda, and
Oh,
she
wow.
helps direct them where they
Huh.
need to go. I mean, she's this
That's what
amazing
happened to me in
person.
India, oddly.
Did you direct where
I I
spirits needed to
didn't know
go?
that it was a job
Yeah, it's a
until
thing.
I was in the hospital, and they were keeping me alive, and my room was just full of all these spirits that had just been in the restaurant with me within 24 hours that
Right.
had perished.
Well,
And they
they were
came with me.
confused,
Yeah,
probably.
came with me, and I'm like going, "You can go to the light now." I didn't know what
Right.
else to say. It was one of
Right.
those weird
Right.
things,
But they
because I
probably
didn't.
listened because sometimes that's all they
And
need
they,
to do is need to
yeah,
know a direction. And it's
hmm,
hard sometimes for spirits these days because there's so many electronics that they tend to go toward that because
oh
electronics
wow,
has that yeah. And like in fact in people's homes where I used to kind of go ghost hunt,
sure,
which we'll get into that too in a second, is because I'm more on the dark and earthy side of the spiritual things. I don't talk to like I'm not an angelic thing. I am more of a I don't know, an earthly
well, I have
whatever.
morning meetings with Aretha Franklin, which, by the way, I got good news for you. We'll go into that later.
Excellent. Um, but I find a lot of them where where their power box, whatever that thing is called. There's a lot of ghost activity that can be
Hmm.
around there because of the electricity. But one
Interesting.
thing Brenda said to me that was amazing that I thought would be really helpful for folks is we had this discussion one time and she said to me something like, "Well, what are you afraid of?" And I'm like, well, but what if I'm like, I don't know. What if I die? I was just kind of being sarcastic. And she
Hmm.
goes, oh, you'll be back. And I was like, oh shit. Do you know the pressure that took off my shoulders?
Yeah.
Where I am so, if I live to be one of those at the end of times kind of thing, or whatever you want to call it,
Anyways, sure.
I'm like, okay, it's okay. If I have to go through that, it's okay.
Yeah, you know what?
It's
Dying's not that
weird.
big of a deal, y'all. It's like
No,
crossing a veil. I did it a few times in India. I
right.
was like floating above the body. All of a sudden, I'm in the body. I'm floating above the body. I'm like, when is this going to stop? And then I had my conversation with the Blessed Mother. At least that's what it appeared to be for me, or she showed up that way. And
Yeah.
that's when I had a choice. I was like, well, damn, now I got to go back.
Well, have you talked much about NDEs on your show? Did you want to talk about NDEs?
We could. Let's do that.
Okay.
It's
Um,
near-death
ND,
experiences.
yeah, near death experience.
Mhm.
And it is, I mean, like I cannot even tell you the number of things where my eyes have got, because I have kind of squinty eyes anyway, but my eyes have just gone really big. And one of those is NDE. And it's such a, so my friend Mona that I had referred to earlier, when Mona died in the car accident, that was the second time that she had died in this lifetime.
Mm,
She had also died and came back, so she had an NDE when she was 25. So
okay.
she was really the first one to introduce me to this, first one I ever met that would talk about it and explain it. And she was in a hospital bed, and what she saw was the top of her head kind of pop open on a hinge. And she's up in the corner of the room. So she's seeing this, right? You said that
Mhm.
you were like in and out, you see what's going
Oh,
on.
yeah, I saw. I was like, man, that's a mess. I don't want to get back up in that.
That's a hot mess. And so
Mhm.
she saw her head pop open and ribbons of gold go into her head. Now, let me tell you what happened to Miss Mona after that incident. She had what's called claircognizance. So we all know what clair is, which is
Yeah,
clear. So we have
clairvoyance.
clairvoyance, clairaudience, clairsentience, like we got the whole family of clairs.
Mm-hmm.
And hers is where she knows things that there's no rational way to explain why she knows it.
Mm.
Like they were
That's fun.
dropping knowledge down. Mona, excuse me, I'm gonna have to adjust here. Mona knew about the great religions with never studying it a thing. Mona couldn't read because she was like ADHD, like she couldn't focus long enough, but she knew
Wow.
things. She also wrote a book, never have even ever read one. But she had this knowledge, and that's what I find, because I've now been so lucky to meet people who have published books that have experienced this, or I actually alerted a guy. There's a guy I used to work with. He was in ad sales for ABC over at Disney, and we were
Uh,
having dinner one night, and he said to me, he said, "Well," he goes, "did I ever tell you about when I got kidnapped in New York?" I'm like, "No."
what?
It's like they had me in a bathtub, all this, and he goes, and they actually took, they had guns pointed on, but somebody took the gun, they were holding it and the barrel, and they hit him on the head with the handle. And he goes, "I almost died." I said, "Oh, really, almost?" Because I already knew what had happened. Because that's the
Uh,
other thing, folks. If you are really present and you are in your body and you're paying attention, you will know shit before it comes out of somebody's mouth.
oh yeah.
And so I was already told that he had had an
Nobody can lie
NDE.
to me. Anyway,
Right,
go on.
right. Exactly. So I was told that
You
he had,
can lie to me, but I'm gonna know you're lying. That's
correct.
just
Yeah, you do whatever you
sorry,
want.
not
That's on
sorry.
you,
Yeah.
right? No, it's not on
Mhm.
me. And he goes, "Well, I almost died." I said, "What did you experience when, right after you got knocked in the head?" And
Mhm.
he said, "Well, it was weird." He said, "I actually felt um I felt how badly I treated valet parkers." I went, "Oh, you did you?" And he's like, "Yeah." He goes, "I was kind of a dick. And I was just demanding and I wasn't kind and just how I made valet parkers feel." And then I came back, I
It's
said,
so random. I mean,
"Well,
out of
it is
all
and
the
it isn't." Well,
people.
the fact that he was a dick to valet parkers is a whole other story. But I said, "Darling, you actually had an NDE because that is the first thing that happens
Oh.
is the life review." And the life review is when, and everybody goes through it, that we are in a position to where we feel the good, the bad, and the ugly, how we made other people feel.
Mm.
Like I wouldn't want to be Jeffrey Dahmer. How about
Oh
that?
my goddess.
That is a
Right?
crappy, crappy life review. And that is actually part of my moral compass is when I think about things that I want to do or say,
Mhm.
I think about how's that going to turn up on my life review? How can I make this a really good life review? And that's why I believe that I'm earnest. I think that's why I try to have kindness. Do I get angry? I do, but they're mainly at MAGA Republicans. Um, so I'm justified. I think God will forgive me. Um, and I don't think that will show up in my life review. But it's like, it is a moral compass about my interactions with people, because um, I want more people in my life, and it has happened, to come back to me and later to say, I wouldn't have been able to get through this, or that if it wasn't for you being my friend. And that's
Mm,
happened several times. And that's how I want my life. I had a friend just recently reach out and said, because she's lost a lot of loved ones in the like of compact in like the last 3 years. And she
right.
goes, if it wasn't for you, I wouldn't have been able to deal with this. And I'm
Mm,
just so grateful that you're my friend. And I love you and thank you. Had my friend Cindy, who has since passed, she was a doctor in Detroit. She was a pulmonologist, and
oh,
she
wow.
was hit on a Sunday morning. She had actually gotten out of her car because there was somebody who was struggling. So she's doctors. What they do, they help,
Oh,
right? They serve. And she got out to help somebody on the freeway, and another kid was
oh,
driving
yeah.
his family to church early on a Sunday morning, lost control, and hit Cindy.
Oh my
And
gosh.
but 3 months prior to that, Cindy was in LA, and we went to go meet her for dinner. And she said, Rieger, they all call me Rieger because they were like, Julie was the fifth most popular name in 1969. So there were too many. So all of our identities were our last name.
That's funny.
So Cindy said, Rieger, I want to talk to you. I'm like, okay. And she goes, I just need to tell you something. And it's very important to me that you know this. I'm
Mm,
like, all right. And by the way, for everybody, you can also be the one to tell people this, not just receive. Because I have
right.
many times told people not this exact thing, but for the same reason. She goes, I just need to tell you. I need you to know that you made me a better doctor. I said, what? She goes,
Wow.
no. She said, because when we were in high school, a friend of ours was in a car accident. Her name is Christy Naylor, and she was in a coma for 3 months, and for 3 weeks, and she passed at that 3 week marker.
Oh, wow.
And everybody was at my house this particular night when Christy's mom called, and Christy was Cindy's best friend.
Mm,
And when I had to tell all of our friends that our other friend had died, and so I remember telling everybody, and I said, Cindy, sit down, and because I knew she'd be devastated, and I sat there for hours and just held her hand, just showed her compassion. That's all I did. I showed her compassion. And she said, because you showed me so much compassion, she goes, I'm so compassionate with my patients and my
mm,
patients' family, because I remember what it felt like, the difference to have somebody be compassionate toward me in a very difficult moment. And then she
right.
said to me, she goes, how did you know how to do that? Where did you get that from? Well, my father had died when I was 13.
Yeah.
And the person I talked to this morning is one who I told this very story. Who I called after I talked to Cindy. Her name is Tammy. And Tammy Reese, when my father died, I was in talking to her sisters that were my age, and Tammy's 5 years older. And she said, Rieger, come here. And we stood in the kitchen. She hugged me for half an hour, no
Oh
less
my gosh.
than a half
That's
an hour.
beautiful.
She showed me compassion.
Hmm.
And because of her, I became a compassionate person. And that's what I told Cindy. I said, it's Tammy Reese. If you want to thank somebody, you can thank Tammy. She showed me. And she goes, well, I've shown hundreds of people compassion, and I hope that they continue what they got from me.
Wow.
Right. And so I don't know where I was going with that,
I don't
other
know.
than
It's like
living a life of a moral compass.
you're showing, how you choose your happy
Yeah.
and how you infect others with it.
Yep.
That's what I'm
That's
hearing,
exactly right. That's
you
exactly
know.
what it is.
And you guys, you never know, a compliment or whatever it is. I mean, even today I decided I was going to buy these little champagnes to put in my new little drink cooler that's in the new sunroom for when I teach the classes. I got the Cokes and the waters, I got little champagnes,
Hmm.
and the guy that I could see he was having a bad day. And I'm like, hey, dude, you styling. Because, he had some sneakers on, big old fro, all this stuff. But, he was put together, but you could tell that he didn't really want to be doing the job he was doing. He goes, well, girl, I dress up. And I said, I know what you're saying, girl. He just had a moment. And then I was walking out. I was like, thank you. And he goes, no, thank you. And I knew what he
Right.
meant by that.
Exactly. You
It
saw
was
him.
just a minute.
You
All it
saw
took.
him.
And
And
here's the other thing, Julie. I always lean into the energy of it. Hey, will actually contribute if I say something? Sometimes it won't, and I know that too. So I know when to dial it back, shut my pie hole, and walk the other way.
right,
And
right.
I know when it's actually going to be a contribution. And that's the beauty of awareness, you guys. If you're actually willing because it's all oneness. If you're actually willing to step into the oneness that this
Right.
universe is wanting to gift you, the world is your oyster, man. There's no way you can't know. At least
And
that's my
here's what I
point.
would tell people based on what you said, because you're absolutely right about knowing when to not say anything. And
Mhm.
because you're in Nashville, I will quote Mr. Kenny Rogers. You got to know when to hold them. You got to know when to fold them. You got to know when to walk away and know when to run.
You're not going to sing it?
No, I won't, but I would sing Glenn Campbell Rhinestone Cowboy one day. Um
Okay. Well,
I used to call 'em all my friends' kids that had babies, like I would come and stay with them to give them a night's rest, and I'd walk around and singing Rhinestone Cowboy. Um
that's
yeah.
that's very interesting
Yeah,
factoid about
it's
you.
weird, the fans will be out there being like, "Yeah, girl, you go." Same with Ronnie Millsap, who just recently lost his wife, which is really sad. But anyway,
Oh no,
yeah, yeah, I met them. And
I
what a
have
kind
too. Well,
man, and she's incredible, right? She just struggled with kind of can't. Anyway, it's a form of cancer that she was dealing with. But anyway,
that damn
again,
cancer.
digress again. So you got to know when to thank someone,
Hmm.
to show gratitude for how they helped you. And I know that I am perfectly imperfect like everybody else on the planet. That's why I'm still here, is that I am perfectly imperfect. And it is okay for me to be vulnerable. It is okay for me to show gratitude. It is okay for me to even delay it 20 years. Or actually by the time I told Tammy, I think it was 30 years.
Wow,
And I just talked to her this morning. Like we are still close. I will love her through time and space. I will forever be grateful because she completely and utterly changed the path of my life.
isn't that beautiful?
Because compassion, right? We were
Mm.
missing so much of it. I think we used to be better. And that is the thing that I was so grateful for. That is the thing that I show, and I honor Tammy every time I show it because I would not have known how.
Right? Hey, yeah, let's make this world great again.
Yeah. Well, let's make it compassion. Like
Yeah.
let's show compassion again. Because we're supposed to all be different. We're all on different paths. We come down on the planet with a job of what we want to do. It doesn't always go that way. Um or it does, right?
Mhm.
And because we're all in these different places, because we're all perfectly imperfect, because we all come down in different lifetimes in different birthday suits. Like I
Mhm.
had a past life reading where there's a life, because it was five karmic lives that are affecting this life, was my
Interesting.
reading from a guy named Jade Luna in Los Angeles, just in case anybody's interested.
That's almost as
And
nice as Tiger Unicorn.
isn't it great? Tiger Unicorn, Jade Luna, exactly right. He had
Say it.
actually mastered the Asterian astrology, which is 26 signs, not the
Oh,
13 signs or whatever
gosh,
those
I could
signs
learn
are.
so much from you. We're gonna have you
Um,
back on. I'm just
I
saying. I can
I
already
will
see
gladly come back on, girl. I'll talk to you any day of the damn week. But
it.
one of my past lives is that I was a black man in Africa, and I was the son of the village healer. And so I know I've been in different birthday suits. I have been different genders, different colors.
Sure.
I've been married, I've been not married, I've been miserable, I've been happy, I've been all of these things. One of my past lives was actually from Egypt.
Oh,
And because we all jump in all different kinds of ways,
sure.
like I'm claustrophobic, so I guarantee you somebody suffocated me in a past life and I haven't worked through it yet. But
Yeah,
apparently, and
I have a heights thing.
you're what?
I have a heights thing.
Oh, well, someone probably pushed you off something.
Must have.
Or fell, one or the other. But I actually had suicide in mine from
Huh.
back in the Egypt days. I was young. I was kind of given to the palace. There was another guy and I was a girl, obviously, and I was quite attractive apparently. And we agreed to like run off together. And I went to the meeting space, and he wasn't there.
Oh
And
wow.
so I committed suicide.
Huh.
And I ask, I go, well, how does that affect this life? I'm been very fortunate. I don't actually suffer from depression. I have other issues, but that's not one of them. And so the suicide actually never entered my mind.
Sure.
And he's like, yeah, because that past life is working right now.
I
He's
see.
like, right? I'm like, oh, I don't have to do anything. I get it.
Yeah, just because
So
you have an
interesting.
awareness doesn't mean you have to do anything with it. I mean,
It
sometimes awareness will make your butt itch. That's
it,
just the
it
way it
there and
is.
there's that, right? But the
Mhm.
past life thing is, we've all been in every incarnation. So
Mhm.
to be gracious to everyone doesn't hurt us, and that's the happiness part because, I don't want to go and pick fights. The exhaustion that must be for people who are racist, how exhausting must that be?
Well,
Like
it's
the
an internal
energy.
point of view too. Even if
It's what?
some of it's karmic,
Oh,
implanted point of view, they choose the
yes.
family that's going to actually, hold that in place for them, which is very interesting. And believe me, we're going to have you back because that is definitely another
Yeah, it
podcast.
is. But how exhausting though, right?
Yeah, yeah,
How
I can't
exhausting to
imagine.
be homophobic, because that's the other time you'd mentioned I've come out twice, right? Coming out gay and then coming out as, I don't know, weirdo, psychically, whatever kind of person. And I
Yeah.
wrote a whole chapter about coming out for the second time because, you know, it's a thing and it's not an easy thing.
Well,
Whether
see,
you're
from the
20 or
background
whether
you
you're
did,
40.
I can see my mother was so supportive about me because of my grandmother. So I have her to thank for that. And your mother told you you could be whatever you wanted to be, which
Yes.
is so incredibly beautiful. So there's a lot more to it than meets the eye,
Yes.
kind of thing. But
But there's a fear, right? Like to strangers. Like when I'm sitting, like when I was working at Fox and all these things started to happen, and Brenda, I took her tarot reading class. So I was reading tarot cards in the cafeteria at Fox. I had a line of people that would come up, and I would do these quick 3 card readings for them. They would bring their friends. They would invite friends and family to the lot
oh
for
my
me to
God.
read their cards, like that kind of stuff. Oh, I can't tell you how many houses I ghost busted, like on command. Um, but at first, it's like, oh shit, what's so and so going to think about me? Like it was just that little scare. This is moments of coming
Yeah,
out. That's a real thing. And
I bet.
now coming out, if you're gay, it's life or death in some of these states. And so like coming out's a real thing, and coming out, like you don't know what people are going to do, especially with this, what they're calling Christian nationalism, which I've never even heard those two words put together until recently. What would they do to somebody like me?
Right. Well, they would
I
think he
don't
was a
know.
heathen for sure.
Oh, well, I got that, but I was that
You're
before.
listening to spirit, they're like, she must be listening to the devil. I don't know. She possessed.
Well,
It's kind of hard to. It is a very interesting time, people.
I
That is
had
true.
a friend of mine. This is a really, since you're saying that it's about the demon and possession thing. Um, so for the record, I've actually performed an exorcism. So P.S.
Same. That's one of my talents.
Um, yeah. Oh, girl, we should go on the road. We should be a duo and do the damn exorcisms because I am afraid no ghost, and I am definitely not afraid
Same.
of an exorcism. But
We'll talk.
I will talk. Interestingly, though, when my book first came out, a really sweet friend of mine, a guy, he called me and he goes, "Julia, I'm so excited. Your book is out." And he was being all sweet. He goes, "But my wife." I go, "Yeah, what about her?" And he said, "Well, um, she was asking like if you're possessed. Like, is this a possession? Is this, devil work? Is this all this kind of stuff?" Because she was very religious, and that's how
Right.
that's what she knew,
Well,
right?
she's being compassionate because she's worried about you.
Yeah, in her way, of
Right.
course, right?
Hmm.
And so I say to him, his name is Sam, and I said, "Sam," I said, "Sweetheart, I only work for one." I said, "I only work for God, honey. Where do you think all this stuff came from?
Right.
Where do you think it came? How would anybody even think that there's a possession when everything I try to do in my life is good work?"
Hmm.
But people have these illusions, right? Humans are great at creating illusions,
Hmm.
and they get involved in whether it's a cult or a religion. Sometimes they're the same, that they make them believe a certain way, and then they look at people like me or people like you, that
Because it
there's
doesn't
something
fit their
wrong
thing.
with us. They don't realize that we're working for their boss. And that was my message, and it's been my message ever since. That question, it doesn't come up really much anymore, but at first that it did. It's like, I only work for God, the end, full stop.
Right.
I
And
don't
that's the
use any of
thing,
it for wrong, for
it,
bad.
it can look different. I mean, there's so many paths up the mountain, but the view from the top is the same.
Right.
We're all actually on the same team. We're just wearing different jerseys.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? It's kind of
Yeah.
like, it's kind of like that.
Yeah.
And
It is
here we
true.
are. We're at the top of the hour, and I want to keep going. So you're going to have to come back.
Oh, happy
Seriously, you're going to have
Happy
to, because I have I feel like we could just break off a whole nother podcast.
to.
Just the two of
Well, the
us.
first thing we're going to do is exorcisms. We're going to go on the road and do exorcisms,
That'd be
because that's
fun.
a whole other story. That
That's
oh my
yeah.
gosh.
Let's write a book, do a
Let's
movie,
yeah. Let's
all
do
the stuff.
something.
I'm down.
Because what the movie The Exorcist, there's truth to that.
I saw that when I was 16.
Oh, I saw that
I
when I
put
was
on
younger.
makeup so that I could pass for 18 or 21, I think, at the time in Alabama with my cousin, because I wanted to see it.
Right.
And then I got goose pimples on my goose pimples because I was going, wait a minute, there's something about this that I know is true and real and true. Real and true. Yeah, there was this interesting thing. But you know what, you guys, we're going to leave that for our next conversation. Julie, this has been so amazing. I don't want to
Tiger,
stop.
for having me.
Till you get enough. I keep on with the force. Don't stop. I don't stop till you get enough. For those of you in YouTube land, I'm holding my microphone. Julie, if people were looking for you, and I'm going to have all the deets about your book below and all this, whatever, where could they find Julie? Where could they find you?
Well, find me how? Find me to hit me directly, or find me.
Well, just like stuff.
They
I guess
can
just
find my
Google your
book
name.
anywhere.
Yeah.
There's an Audible version, which is actually me. That I did the. It was me. It was awesome too, by the way. It was fun. I did it really fast.
You get her in your ear. That's always good.
You get me in your ear. So you can find it anywhere. It's also on Audible. The podcast is Insider's Guide to the Other Side, and it's an iHeart podcast, which you can listen to it anywhere you listen to your podcasts. And I'm on Instagram, so welcome to hit me up at Julie Jul. I can't even spell my own damn name. Julie Julie Rieger Rieger Writes Writes. So it's at Julie Rieger Writes on Instagram. And yeah, that's it, I think.
Cool. Thank you so much for being my guest. I'm looking forward to having you back. And if you guys enjoyed this podcast, click the like button, subscribe, share with all your friends, all the people that you sense that this could be a contribution to, right? Exactly. And thank you for listening. So
thank y'all.
We love hanging out. And until next time, ciao, y'all.
Thank you so much for choosing happiness. If you've enjoyed this podcast, please subscribe, share, and give us a like. And if you want more happy, subscribe to the Choosing Happiness membership, where you can play directly with me, Rüdrani Devi, the Happiness Lady. How does it get any better than that?